Here's three-pointer. Bang! Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied.
Three, two, one. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Vert. It's been a while since we last talked. The Lakers won an NBA championship, and the NBA figured that it would restart itself here shortly. December 22nd, I think, is the official date. That's off the top of my head, but today I'm not joined by my usual co-host. I'm joined by a wonderful stand-in and elite fan-side writer for the Duke Blue Devils, Julieann. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Ian?
You know, I'm doing good. I'm really excited that all this NBA news has been happening, and I'm really excited to just sit down and talk basketball with you since it's been a while since we talked on here. Fun fact, I'm just going to plug it a little bit. Julieann and I have a Belmont basketball podcast. If you'd like to listen to that, it'll be posted on our social medias here shortly, and you guys can take a listen. But back to our regular scheduled broadcasts. Julieann, I want to know what you feel or what you've thought so far about the NBA offseason, their plan for next year, and just what's your general feeling towards everything that's transpired in the past month or so?
So much has happened in the past month. Unexpected injuries with Klay Thompson, unexpected, the Clippers dropping Montrezl Harrell was literally so wild to me. I was so offended by that. And they just handed another championship to the Lakers with that, honestly. Like, it's just absolutely wild what's been happening.
Yeah. I mean, especially because the Lakers used their full mid-level exception on Montrezl Harrell. They signed him at 2 years, $19 million, somewhere around there. And we can just dive right into the Lakers right now. To me, they've been one of the most fascinating teams this offseason. What Rob Pelinka has done in terms of retooling and rebuilding and making a championship team better. I mean, they bring in Montrez, like you talked about. Then last night they signed Marc Gasol officially, and so that's another good big man that a few short seasons ago was an all-star caliber big for the Memphis Grizzlies. And he won a championship in Toronto with Kawhi and Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry, and then he was part of a really competitive Toronto team this season. And then now he joins the Lakers, and he's still a very competent player. He might not be the all-defensive level Marc Gasol that we remember growing up, but he's still a very good NBA player. So they bring him in, and then they trade for Dennis Schroeder in a deal that looks like, they might have beat the Thunder out on that one. They get a 20-point-per-game scorer to bring off their bench, a guy that fills the need that they desperately had last season in terms of playmaking and shot creation at the point guard slot. They still have LeBron. They're supposed to be bringing AD back on a new contract soon here. And yes, Avery Bradley left, but they re-signed KCP, who showed up for them in these finals. Like, people made jokes about him. Heck, I made jokes about him. I'm on the record saying, how is this guy in the NBA? And then meanwhile, he scores 20 points in an NBA Finals game. I just think what the Lakers have done this offseason in terms of filling certain needs, it's been really impressive. They still need a wing, in my opinion, and Nicholas Batum, depending on what happens with Charlotte and Boston and if a sign-and-trade can go through, Nicholas Batum could be on the market. But all in all, I'd say I'd give the Lakers an A in terms of their offseason and how they've handled it. What do you think?
I agree with everything you just said. I think that what the Lakers needed to do, I mean, they have all their starters. They're fine with that. I really think they need to build up their bench. They got a great second to Anthony Davis with Marc Gasol. He is older. He's not the all-star that we once knew, but his three-point percentage has actually been improving over the years. He's now shooting about 40 from the three, and that just makes a talented defensive front court.
That is true. They had to let go of Dwight Howard, but I don't honestly, I'm not a Dwight Howard truther. I don't think going from Dwight Howard to Marc Gasol is a downgrade in any sense of the word.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Lakers are interesting to me. I wonder, because they said LeBron, has joked that he might not play early in the season just because of the quick turnaround. But depending on what happens with Kuzma, do you think Kuzma could be the next one out here for the Lakers? Could they have one more move left in them?
I definitely think that getting rid of Kuzma for a better player would be a good option. I mean, Kuzma is just a very inconsistent person off the bench, player off the bench. And I think that if they made a big move with Kuzma, their roster could be set and they could really easily win another championship.
Well, on the Clippers side of things, they lose Montrezl Harrell. They re-sign Marcus Morris, I believe it is, because there's Markieff and Marcus. It was Marcus Morris. They signed him to 4 years, $64 million, or 3 years, $64 million, something preposterous. And I frankly don't know what they're doing. I mean, to be the opponent in LA, the little brother team, and Kawhi goes there to rebrand the Clippers and make them a winner, you lose Montrezl, who was a sixth man of the year last year. And I feel like they're going in the wrong direction. They haven't necessarily made any moves that shock me. They got Luke Kennard, a 15 to 18 point per game scorer in Detroit. They traded for him. But at the end of the day, keeping Montrezl could have helped push that lineup over the edge. I get he didn't have a good playoff run, but you have to think that he had just lost his grandma, and all of that factors into how you play on the court. So what do you make of the Clippers offseason? I feel like it's a mixed bag.
I can't stand the Clippers as of right now. I feel like they're still relying on the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard duo, which last season proved ineffective. And it seems I can't explain the Montrezl Harrell that they didn't re-sign him. I mean, Montrezl Harrell made it clear on social media the other day that it wasn't him that didn't want to stay, it was them that didn't want him. And so it really does not make sense to me. Luke Kennard, he was a former Blue Devil. I still think that he left way too early. He was not ready for the NBA, and 15 to 18 per game is a pretty good contribution, but it's not something that the Clippers really desperately needed. They definitely needed someone who could score up towards the 20s and stuff like that.
Right.
Because Paul George was so inconsistent. Kawhi Leonard did not show the talent that he did when he was with the Raptors. Mm-hmm. It's just a very the dynamic seems out of tune. And they don't seem like they're a team right now. It's just kind of like a bunch of players on a roster.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trending towards in the NBA. And for me, it's a bit disconcerting. You know me, I'm a basketball purist. I like continuity. I like guys, sticking together even if they come up just short. I'm a Thunder fan. We were good for a decade and didn't win a ring, but to me, being good for a decade meant something. And I don't think we're nearing a point in the NBA where we're not going to see that. And that kind of pushes me to the next point. After touching on the Lakers and the Clippers, I want to touch on the Houston Rockets and what's going on with James Harden and just him wanting out and him feeling as though Houston isn't a place where he can win basketball games. And it's crazy because I wrote a piece just detailing my thoughts on the Harden trade. It's on a basketball blog called The Sport Universe. And I wrote about how the grass isn't always greener. And we're nearing this point with star players in the NBA where they ink these massive extensions. Harden still has 2 years left on his deal and then a player option for a third if he chose to pick that up. But we're nearing a point in the NBA where these star players, they sign these extensions with these ball clubs, and these teams commit to winning with them as their best player. They tailor everything around that player. And then when they come up short because of that player not showing up in big moments, they blame the organization and want out. And so I don't know what to make of this Harden situation because it mirrors so much about what we've seen. Anthony Davis forced his way out of New Orleans and it worked. And I think that sets a dangerous precedent. Not every time that you force your way out of a city, it's going to work. I mean, think about what happened with Paul George. He forced his way out of Indiana, ended up in Oklahoma City to lose in the first round in back-to-back years. Then he leaves Oklahoma City to blow a 3-1 lead in the second round. The grass isn't always greener. And I'm scared that with superstar players constantly forcing their way out after these long-term deals, there's going to be a day of reckoning. And I'm not a pro-owner type of guy. I'm not here defending billionaires, right? Because they will jip you out of money any chance they get. And a team can trade you at the drop of a hat. And you want to control your destiny. But there comes a point where you have to honor an agreement. And I'm scared that Harden wanting out to go to Brooklyn, it's clear that what Houston would want in return for James Harden is a player like Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant. He can't get traded to Brooklyn without them giving up one of those two guys, I don't think. Playing with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, both of those guys are ball-dominant players. Kevin Durant is probably the more versatile of the two because he offers you off-ball shooting. And in Golden State, he proved that he could operate off-ball that first year he was there. But James Harden is a high usage rate guy. In the past 4 years, 5 years in Houston, it's just been James Harden and friends where he's the entire system. And the scary thing for me, and I know I'm going on a bit in this monologue, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's just that when you have three superstar players, someone has to sacrifice. And eventually players realize that sacrificing isn't that fun. Not everybody is Chris Bosh, that they can live with being a 25-point per game scorer down to 18. And I don't think players realize that in the moment, yeah, sacrificing if you're winning sounds great, but sacrificing if you're losing isn't that great either. And then what it becomes is you sacrifice in terms of how much you have the ball in your hands, how many points you score. And that comes to bite you come contract time because teams can be like, well, you only average 18 points per game. They won't put that in context when it comes to paying you your money. And so in the end, I think it's a lose-lose situation for the players. You force your way out, and you know what? A day of reckoning is coming where the owners are going to be like, fine, you guys want to do this? We're going to change the CBA, and that day is coming very soon, especially if star players keep trying to force their way out of deals that they just signed because they feel that the grass is always greener. And then eventually it's not, and that's the reality of it. In a 30-league team, only one can win a championship. And sometimes you can have all the superstars, you can have everything in place, but it just doesn't quite click. Think about what happened with Boston and Kyrie. They had Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, Kyrie Irving. And, they didn't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's the reality of it. The grass isn't always greener. What do you think?
I think that James Harden is being a little bit of a diva, and the fact that he wants to go to the Nets with two leaders like Irving and Durant, I think that you're right. It would be a rude awakening because it would not go the way that he wanted it to.
Right.
He would want to be, the star of the team, the face of the team, and just win a championship that way. And I don't think that the dynamic would be too pretty. I think that there would be a lot of clashing, and I think that, James Harden, I feel like has had a bad run with like trying to win championships and stuff. In OKC, it didn't work out, and then he went to the Rockets. It didn't work out, and I'm not sure if James Harden is a fantastic player, but I'm not sure. I mean, he might be the problem. Do you know what I'm saying? A player with that caliber, playing with players like Russell Westbrook and in OKC, Durant and Chris Paul, like he should have won a championship by now. And I think that I'm not trying to place all the blame on him, but I think that something needs to change with Harden. It's not these organizations. They're fantastic organizations, and they make great decisions when it comes to free agency and draft picks and this, that, and the other. And I think that Harden has a great place in the Rockets. They might not have made the best decisions when it comes to this offseason, but I think that he should just set aside whatever qualms he has with this organization and just try to work with what he's got.
I mean, think about it. Like when Chris Paul came, Harden ran him out of town. And then Harden wanted Russell Westbrook. So the Houston Rockets get him Russell Westbrook. And then when Russell Westbrook tries to establish any level of accountability, when he calls out Harden for stuff that he could do better, that's when Harden wants out. And that's the part that doesn't sit well with me. It's not that you're running from the organization because they aren't committed to winning. I feel that it's him running from accountability. I think of Game 7 against the Warriors in 2018, where they missed 27 straight threes, and like you missed 27 straight threes in Game 7, and Harden has never had that playoff moment where the game hangs in the balance and he goes out and grabs it. He's never been the one to do that. That moment's always been taken from him. And I think of 2019 where Kevin Durant gets hurt, the Warriors are vulnerable, and to me that was the moment where Harden says, like, now's the time. And you're playing at home in Houston and you lose in a game you can't lose. And you'll be like, well, Harden had, 36 points, this, that, the other. But I'm like, the impact of you can clearly see it when you watch the game instead of looking at the box score and say that player willed his team to a win. And Harden has had those moments in the regular season, but they've never come in the biggest moment in the playoffs. And I feel that partly that's the reason why the Rockets don't have a championship. When your team is missing threes, you think that Harden, who averaged 35 points per game in the regular season, would say, I'm going to take over here because no one can stop me. But he's never had that moment where he just grabs the torch and says, we're not supposed to win this game, but I'm going to get us there. And I think about Game 7 against the Thunder this past playoffs, where Lou Dort drops 30 on him. And if Harden doesn't get that block at the end, I feel that Lou Dort might hit a game winner in a Game 7 before Harden does. And then we're talking about the Rockets losing in the first round. At some point, Harden has to say, why haven't we won? And look at the man in the mirror.
What you said about players calling him out, what first came to my mind is that do you not think that Kevin Durant, one of the best vets, active vets in the NBA, and Kyrie Irving aren't going to call you out when you play the blame game and you can't make your threes when the game is on the line and it's the playoffs and you're about to go to the semifinals?
The grass is always greener in his eyes. So I feel that, Kyrie Irving is a bit of a prima donna and Kevin Durant is an eccentric guy. And I think he's like, oh, we're friends. But, winning equates money and people act different with money on the line. And when money's in the equation, I think Kevin Durant's proved he's about winning. He won 2 rings with the Warriors as the best player on that team. And I think he cares about winning. James Harden hasn't done that. And so I feel that KD knows what to expect in those moments versus what Harden knows. I don't think he knows what to expect because he hasn't played in those moments. And the last time he played in the finals, he didn't even play well with KD and Russ. I hate to say it, but like Harden's a bit of a career playoff underperformer, and he can only look at himself for the reason he doesn't have a championship. I mean, Daryl Morey, when he was still with the Houston Rockets, was completely committed. He got Harden the coach he wanted. He surrounded Harden with players that complement his play style. Yet at the end of the day, they didn't win. Whose fault is that?
Exactly, I agree.
So shifting gears, I wanted to talk about player pyramids and who we feel are the best players in the league right now. It's been something that I've just been trying to think about. And how do you characterize where a player stands in the league in terms of impact on and off the court and just their overall presence in the game? So Julieann has listed her top 5 here. She did a bit of homework. So Julieann, what's your top 5?
So my top 5 is I'm going to do 5 to 1 because that's a little bit more dramatic. 5, Luka Doncic.
All right.
4, Giannis.
Okay.
3, LeBron James.
Oh, LeBron's at 3.
Yes.
So
2,
who's 2 and 1?
Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And my 1, my favorite player right now in the league, Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard. Okay,
yes.
Explain.
He, I think he's the best point guard in the league. Don't hate on me. Okay. He is so consistent. He's such a team leader. And, a player is, as big as the assets that are behind him. McCollum and Nurkic and, they just picked up Robert Covington. I just think that they're going to those players just make him better, and I think that's just as important as, you know, the players' individual skills.
Mm-hmm.
And he just keeps getting better and better, greater and greater, and I don't see a decline anytime soon with him. And I think that you know, they lost big in the playoffs, and they're definitely kind of have a chip on their shoulder. I think that this season they're coming for blood, and I think Damian Lillard is going to be better than he was last year. I love Damian Lillard so much.
Well, a good defense. Yeah, I necessarily wouldn't put Damian one, but I can understand why. I think too, his playoff resume in terms of, yes, he hasn't won a championship, but he's had some pretty important games in the playoffs, like when he hit that 40-foot three over Paul George to end the first round series, and they ended up going to the Western Conference Finals that year. I wonder how good this Portland team could have been last season if they were healthy, if they didn't lose Rodney Hood, if they had Nurkic all season. And when you look at Dame's game, it mirrors a lot of what Steph Curry does when Steph Curry was a unanimous MVP. Both guys can shoot from the logo. Both guys are great shot creators for themselves. They can shoot off the bounce. They can shoot off the catch. And they're crazy efficient offensive players. And so, yeah, I could see Damian Lillard being in your top five. And one is a bit cavalier, but hey, I respect it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that because Steph Curry is Steph Curry, a lot of people don't consider him the best point guard in the league. But I think because Steph Curry is something that we've never seen before, and now here comes Damian Lillard putting up similar numbers, shooting from the logo. I think that he's a force to be reckoned with, and that at some point in the next half decade, he might take over Steph Curry's title.
I wonder, and this is just an interesting thought experiment here. If you switch Steph Curry and Damian Lillard, like have Dame play in Oakland and have Steph play in Portland, are the careers flipped? Does Dame win unanimous MVP because he's playing in that Warrior system? Does Dame win 3 championships? Does Dame have Steph's career? Because when you look at the amount of resources that the Warriors have had in the past 5-6 seasons in comparison to what Portland has, they're different markets, they have different budgets, and so it's just the types of players that you can have in San Francisco or Oakland versus the types of players that want to come to Portland. And so that's an interesting thing that I've always thought about is they play so similarly. If you put Dame in Steph's position, are the Warriors just as successful?
That's a very good question. I don't know. Because I think Damian Lillard, he's just recently kind of come out of the woodworks, or the closet, as you could say, as one of these very impactful point guards. I think that what he has in Portland is exactly what he needs. If he went to Oakland, I just think that I don't know, players like Klay Thompson, even though he's tragically tore his Achilles, players like Klay Thompson and now James Wiseman is in the mix, and Draymond Green, I don't think they'd be the same dynasty as if Steph was there, because I think Steph does motivate these players by just how unreal he is and how good he is. And I think he'd be a good addition, but I don't think he would be the Damian Lillard that we know, dropping, back-to-back games with 50-plus points, things like that. I think where Damian Lillard is right now is perfect for him, because he can be a leader of the team, and he has those guys behind him like CJ McCollum to back him up. And I don't think that he would be better than Steph in Oakland.
It's just an interesting thought experiment. So my pyramid of players that I have, I'll go 1 to 5, since you went 5 to 1 and I just like being contrary. So number 1, to me, it's still LeBron. what LeBron has done in year whatever it is, I mean, the guy ages like wine. So
Will this be year 18?
something like that. What he did with the Lakers and especially with the way that he played in the NBA Finals. And has LeBron lost a step? And am I on the podcast saying that LeBron looks a step slow? Yeah, I'm on the podcast saying that. But I'm looking at it holistically. He's won a championship with 3 separate teams. And the way that he played and the way that for some games, like, he may not be able to do it for an entire series anymore, but in must-win games, he can just flip the switch, and he can get you 40, 12, and 12 still, and that's still going to be LeBron. He may not be able to do it games 1 through 6 or 7, but he'll do it, games 3, 5, and a closeout game, and in those other games, he'll get you a 25-point triple-double still. And so his bad games are everyone else's great games, and maybe I sound like a LeBron truther or whatever, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I shouldn't really be defending LeBron being the number 1 player in the NBA as staunch as I'm defending it right now, but there's something culturally iconic about LeBron James and what he's done and what he's meant to me as a basketball fan. For as long as he's still in the league, even if he, sucked, I'd still be like, hey, you got to give LeBron respect. He's a top 5 player in the league, even if he was terrible. And so LeBron's my number 1. At number 2, I have Giannis. And let me explain. Yes, Giannis had a bad playoff run, and yes, he lost in the second round, and everybody's questioning whether the Bucks can win a championship with Giannis being their best player, and everybody's like, oh, I don't know, Giannis can't shoot, Giannis can't do this, Giannis can't do that, this, that, the other. Giannis can still get you 20, 12, and 8 with 2 blocks and 2 steals and shoot 60% from the floor. And yes, he runs and dunks. That everybody talks about. Oh, all Giannis does is run and dunk. But he is one of the most lethal players in transition that I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. And I think a lot of the Bucks' shortcomings don't directly fall on Giannis. Yes, he needs to shoot the ball better in the playoffs. Yes, he needs to be able to create his own shot better in the playoffs. But the Bucks have had no point guard playmaking or creation. It's just been Giannis and Middleton. And for as good as Middleton can be, he's one of those guys where you're not surprised if he gets you 30 points and you're not surprised if he gets you 12 points. That's just the nature of Chris Middleton, And so he needs a better second banana. And I think that Jrue Holiday going to Milwaukee will really help them out because he gives them what they were sorely missing in a point guard that has playmaking and shot creation. And I think he'll loosen things up for Giannis because I've constantly said Giannis is more Shaq than Kobe. Now, what do I mean by that? It's harder for a big that is centered on scoring around the basket to win playoff games because at the end of the day, you're taking a beating down there. You need a guard that can help take some of the offensive load. Shaq couldn't win without Kobe, and Shaq never won without Kobe. He got the Magic to the finals and they got swept, And so that's the key is like if you're going to be a big, you need a guard that can create their own shot. And so that's what Giannis has been missing. And I think that Milwaukee might have just found that in Jrue Holiday. Did they overpay for him? Of course they did. It's Milwaukee, And so I hope that he has a season that he has a playoff run this season that will remind people just why he was a back-to-back MVP and why he was a defensive player of the year this past season. So that's my number 2. At number 3, I have, and I get this might be an overestimation or an overrating. I have Luka. I love Luka. And there's something so enamoring about his game. Can he shoot the 3 better? Hopefully, yes, he'll get those percentages up. But I think he's a capable shooter. His jump shot isn't broken. He takes a lot of tough contested threes. He plays like a bigger James Harden. And that's what fascinates me so much about Luka's game is just how he's big. Like the dude is like, he's just thick. And so he's able to have people bounce off of him. He's able to draw contact and finish around the rim. And in a lot of ways, he can do the stuff that people harp on Giannis for not being able to do. And I think that the Dallas Mavericks will be a real contender this year, especially if Luka takes that next step. He's already one of the best players in the league at like 20 years old. And so I can't imagine what his 21-year-old season will look like. So he's my number 3. At number 4, I have Kawhi, and look, I can explain because people will get on me like, oh, Kawhi didn't have a good series against the Nuggets, and Kawhi takes games off in the regular season, and you're right. I can't look past that, but I also can't forget what Kawhi can be when he's fully healthy. And maybe he hasn't been fully healthy since he hurt his knee in the playoffs in 2019. And maybe that played into it, and maybe that played into the what's it called? Load management. That's the word I was looking for. And you know, but at the end of the day, Kawhi can still take over games, and Kawhi can still close out games for you. And he's still one of the most clutch closers that the NBA has seen in recent years. And there's so many shades of his game remind me of Michael Jordan. And I have Kawhi at 4. At 5, see, 5 is difficult because there's a whole bunch of guys that I'd want to put at 5, but then it's like, I don't know, like, is he really the number 5 guy in the league? Is he not? And for the sake of this exercise and for the sake of dealing with the NBA as a whole, and kind of after the NBA Finals and what he showed me, is it crazy if I put Jimmy Butler at 5 as the number 5 best player in the NBA currently going into this season? I mean, he had a 40-point triple-double in the NBA Finals, and he took a Heat team that nobody expected to be there to the Finals as a 5 seed. And so, like, Jimmy Butler, in my mind, he offers leadership, defensive ability, offensive creation. He can score at all 3 levels, though he's a reluctant 3-point shooter. Like, he can score if he wants to. And I think his importance and what he did in this postseason reminded everybody of just how capable he is. And so going into the season, yes, I'd have Jimmy Butler as a 5th best player in the league. Again, that's subject to change depending on how the season goes. But, I mean, that's my 5. What do you think?
I respect I respect that a lot, and I actually love that you put Jimmy Butler as your 5. He might be able to be argued above Kawhi, in my opinion, because anyone that can take a Heat team that's so young, such an underdog team, a team that people kind of joked about and laughed about, and kind of almost beat them in the NBA Finals against a stacked Lakers team. I mean, I was scared for a second when they started winning games in the finals. I was like, are the Heat really about to beat the Lakers right now? And I think I love him as the leader of that Heat team, and I really can't wait to see what happens this season. Hopefully the season carries out the way it's supposed to, and games aren't canceled game after game. I think that the NBA is good. The NBA is going to set it up really well, and I'm very excited to see what Jimmy Butler does and what the entire Heat team does.
Yeah, as we were speaking, the Heat apparently offered Bam Adebayo an $163 million extension. And so if that goes to show anything about the Heat, and they take care of their stars. And so I'm excited to see what happens with Miami and Jimmy Butler and Bam. I think they're an interesting combination, and I think that they're linked to making runs for Giannis in 2021. Everybody apparently is making a run for Giannis that offseason, but again, only time will tell. So as we close today, Julieann, what is your one team that is on the rise that maybe or may not have made the playoffs this past season that you are going to be watching closely?
Let me think. I mean, Phoenix, like, they didn't make the playoffs, right? They just they got seeded out or whatever.
Yeah, they went 8-0 and didn't get in.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be absolutely insane, and acquiring Chris Paul, that's going to be fantastic for the locker room and the entire dynamic. They did that without losing any of their most valuable players. They acquired Chris Paul without losing any of their most valuable players, which was a huge move. And I think that, I think Phoenix is going to be a team that I watch closely. A Booker and Paul duo, that's that's going to bring them up a lot. And I'm very excited to see what they do.
See, my team, I don't think they're necessarily going to make the playoffs, but a team that's just going to be intriguing on League Pass to watch for me is the Charlotte Hornets. I want to know what Michael Jordan is thinking in terms of paying Gordon Hayward boatloads of cash. And then this LaMelo Ball thing really intrigues me because I've been hard on LaMelo. Like, he can't shoot, he doesn't play defense, but there's something so enamoring about that Ball family. And the fact that LaMelo Ball is going to be this big fish in a small pond. Like, Charlotte is a small media market. They're not LA. They're not New York. They're not any – heck, they're not even a New Orleans. This is where his brother Lonzo plays. It's Charlotte. And so it'll just be intriguing to watch. Not only is LaMelo going to be a good NBA player, and if he's a good NBA player, does LaMelo have the potential to be a star? But what was Jordan thinking with Gordon Hayward? And will this Charlotte Hornets team be kind of feisty because they have Devontae Graham and they have a really good young head coach? And, you know, Charlotte is now become one of my League Pass teams where I'll just be keeping tabs on their storyline. I doubt that they'll even be a playoff team. I'm really far from it, actually. I don't think they're going to be very good at all. But, you know, they might just get frisky. And so it'll be interesting to see what Jordan is putting together.
Yeah, the Hornets are one of those teams that I kind of feel bad for all the time. Like, they offered Montrezl Harrell a huge deal, and he turned it down for a 2-year, $19 million contract with the Lakers. And that really says something about an organization. And then the fact that they gave Gordon Hayward so much money after – I mean, he's been putting up, like, okay numbers, but they needed a big man. Gordon Hayward was not what they needed, and I'm just very confused. And I'm excited to see what LaMelo Ball can do. I think that well, I want something that I did want to bring up is that I think the Denver Nuggets really won in the draft this year. They picked up R.J. Hampton, a player that has similar assets to LaMelo Ball, and then pair that with, Jamal Murray, Jokic, Jeremy Grant, and Michael Porter Jr., who they won with the last draft. I think that LaMelo's a good shooter, but he has played professional basketball already. He's played with a lot of big men in Australia, in the NBL. Like, he does have experience in a professional league. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
The whole thing is fascinating to me. Just like are LeVar and Jordan going to ever play one-on-one? I mean, that's just one of the storylines for me. Will that ever happen? Will two business moguls like themselves make a pay-per-view event out of it? Can that happen, please? Like, I will pay you $50 to watch Michael Jordan completely defile LeVar on a basketball court.
I want them to do like a charity game or something. Like, if the All-Star game was happening and if All-Star Week was happening, I think that could be an event in and of itself. Just LeVar v. Michael Jordan. Like, that would be too funny. It would be embarrassing. I mean, LeVar did win. Did win. I think LeVar himself won the draft. Like, he now has two sons, the first two brothers to be top 5 picks. So I think LeVar, himself kind of won this offseason, but I would love to see Jordan v. LeVar.
That would be hilarious.
Comedy.
Absolutely comedy. But thank you for sitting down and talking with us, Julieann. It's always good to hear your opinions on things. And we'll be talking more as the season progresses. And so I hopefully you'll be on the Vert a lot more. You guys can hear more of us on Curbside. It's a Belmont basketball podcast again, and it's a lot of fun to record. So as always, we'll talk to you next time. May the rest of your day be the best of your day.